This is code.org, and this is Natural Language Processing Project. Woohoo! All right, guys, this is a big project, and here's mine. Let me show you what it does first. So let me smack the run, and by smack I mean click. Don't smack run, it's a nice button. Type a sentence. Hello. Type a sentence. I can tell you the sentiment of it. Type item exit. I'm deeply predictable. Hello world. And let's see. What do I have here? The average of it, the sentiment average is 3.1. After removing negative words, the average is 0.75. And I can type another sentence. This is so cool. Yes. Whatever. Not really, but a sentence. But anyways, boom. And I guess this doesn't have negative words. And let's go ahead and type byte exit. All right. So this is my program. Let me hit upon the requirements. How do you get an A? What do you need to do to master this project? And that leads me to our handy dandy rubric. All right, first off, notice I'm already on the rubric of this, right? This is perfect. This is what you want to pay attention to because this is how you score full credit right there. All right, and what you're going to need, what we need, what I need is an array list. So we have to create an array list and add elements to it. Cool. We have to transverse. Don't let that word scare you. We're going to move through an array list and modify it. So maybe you jump through a list and start chopping it up. You remove stuff. You create a new one. I don't know. Do some modifying. Well, I do know. That's why I'm making this video. Yeah. String manipulation. Create a new string and access individual characters or chunks of characters. Substring is an awesome way to do that. Wow, my just drawing is not. All right, let's do that. Substring is a great way to do that. And transverse a string to modify. Again, substring, assigning new strings. There's a bunch of ways, and I'll show you an example of a few. Now, file, input, user interaction. Create and read a file and manipulate data in the file. Obtain user input that informs the behavior. Yes, and we'll also do an example of this. Guys, you want to pay attention to these, right? I often see students dive right in, create awesome projects, and then, just like forget this part of it, and they end up with a lower score, and it's one of the best projects I've ever seen. This is your grade. Do this stuff. All right, that being said, let me also hit upon this. So, natural language processing. These are some examples of things you can do. The one I picked for my project that I focused on is this, is sentiment analysis. All right, now that is out of the way, let's take a look. So how I'm going to go through mine is I've created it, and I'm not going to lie, this program is going to be complex. Whatever program you generate is going to be complex. So in this tutorial, I will be walking through my program and giving you a variety of examples of how to fulfill some of those or all of those requirements on the rubric. However, I also want to give you a general overview of approach here. First things first, a mistake that I see, guys, use these. You are given these classes because you are allowed to use them. Code is an iterative process, right? These are tools for us to use. So please do. For instance, file reader. If you see this part of the rubric, file input, create and reads a file and manipulates the data. Mr. How do I create a file? I can't do that. Yeah, you can. We've done it a lot. We have. And so if I go look at text processor, they even have an example of this. How do they do it? Well, they're using the file reader class getString data. Wait a minute. That's not creating a file. It has to be more complex than that. File reader, getString data. All right, what does this do? Create file. Where's that function? Right here. Create file. My file, new file. Use the tools you have available to you. This is not impossible. All right, that's my little go you spiel. Let me dive in first. Let's go real broad. What am I doing here? All right, so real broad, my class takes in the sentiment values, this whole file, it chops it up line by line. Now, wait, it's not done with its chopping. Once it chops it up line by line, it is going to break it apart using this, comma. Now, the reason that it's valuable to do that is that this can apply to a ton of things. You don't have to use a comma. Maybe you want to use parts of speech. You could break it up with the colon here. So you have these easy to access as well. All right, what I do with that is once I break it up, I create a word list and a value list. And doing this means I know that if I say abrupt is at index, this would be index 12 then. I know if in the word list, if index 12 is abrupt, and the value list index 12 is the value of the sentiment, be it positive or negative, right? So I'm slicing up my file and text and jamming it into these array lists, which is good because we're going to need to be utilizing array lists for a variety of tasks. Now, what else am I doing? That's not it, right? That's just the start. Well, I'm letting users input text here, right? And as they input that text, I'm also processing that into a word list and a value list, right? And then the other aspect of this is my calculations and then my modifying. So get sentence average. We've seen something similar to this. Again, for the project, you don't need to recreate the wheel. I get the average. The other thing I do is remove negative words, which we'll be hitting upon transversing and modifying an array list. All right, that's the super broad overview. I'm going to dive into a bit of the nitty gritty now. All right, so here I am, text sentiment. I am instantiating an object or an instance of my class, my text sentiment class. I'm running the constructor and I'm passing it the file name that I'll be using right here. Let's head up to my constructor. What do I do with that file name? Well, I set it to a class-wide variable. And then, like I said, I make use of my file reader class and the getStringData method to chop it up. So all that ends up in this text list is every line of this file as a separate index of the array. So this is index 0, index 1. Each line is at a separate point, and it's spread throughout this array. Now, what I do after that, though, is I don't want to just chop up the file. I'm not done dicing. Ooh, that sounds like a vacuum. Never mind. I want to chop it up even more, right? I want to make use of this information, and the easiest way I think to do that is creating an array list. So let me go down to where that guy is. And first, broad of this method, well, hey, rubric, data structures. It creates a new list and adds elements. What I'm going to do first is I need to define this as a new array list, right? I just declared it up here, but I need to give it some values now. So I define it as a new array list. And then my for loop here, all I'm doing, sentiment values, which is all of the lines from the file. Actually, guys, let me get rid of this. I don't need, this is an approach. I could have it pass that as an argument, but I don't need it because I already have access to this from the instant variables. There we are, text list. And now this is where I start chopping. So I say, get the comma index, get the word, get the number, and add those. I'm going to actually print some of this out to make it easier. All right, so I just threw this in here just to show you what's going on. Let me hit run and see if I didn't break anything. Perfect. All right, so this is going to let us peer into this method. Like I was saying, guys, I grab the line, and that's what I'm printing. So here's my line each time. I'll just go to this one. The line here would be abnormal, negative 0.34. Comma index is 8. Well, let's look. Yep. Right? If you count starting at 0, that is the index of our comma. Now I start dicing up the stuff. Abnormal it grabs as my word, negative 0.34 as the number. How is it doing that? Another thing I really recommend for this project is documentation times a bazillion. So, hey, I'm not really sure what substring or how that worked. Good. That's fine. You can't remember everything. I can't either. So I'm going to head over to Java string and take a look. Substring, right here. All right, so what are we doing? Method returns a string containing characters from a specific starting index to an int index. The end index is optional. So what I do is I say the start of my string, right? Whatever line I'm on, so right here, the start of it, to the comma index. Now, the end of this is not inclusive, which means the index I put in at here, whatever character is actually there, isn't going to be included. So it's everything up to this character. And that's how I end up with our word. I chop it up and I grab our word. Now, I do number as a string. Well, what do I have left? Everything after the comma, right, and this, everything after the comma is my number. So then, for that aspect of it, I don't need an end anymore, right? Because the line is just this, for example. I don't need an end index. I can just give it a starting index, and the computer will automatically knows, okay, get everything to the end of the string, which is great. So I just say comma index plus 1, because I don't want to include it, and boom, number. I then need to parse it as a double. Right now it's a string. And after that, I can add it to my word and value list. I want to hit upon again how this is valuable. Say you want to do parts of speech instead. Hey, guess what? All I would do now for that is go bloop. Cool, done. Right? So this is an excellent approach to parsing out, to breaking out data into a more usable form. All right. Now that we have it broken out, I've created those lists. Now, the next, here, let me clear that, boom. All right, so with those created, my program's ready, hopefully, to be used. Okay, so now scanner input, this is just used for user input. I print out my little welcome statement. I then instantiate it, or I declare a new string, and I assign it to whatever input the user just wrote. All right. So that is going to be used during my loop. This is how my program is running continuously. This also fulfills user interaction, obtain input information behavior. Obtain user input to inform the behavior. This user input right here informs this. If they type by, my program is over. So check, create and read a file. We did that. And now I have user input. All right. Create a new array list and add elements. Check. Transverse an array list to modify elements. I need that still. And we're going to hit upon these. Oh, wait. String manipulation. Create a new string. I should have pointed this out. Boom. We've actually already done that too, guys. Right here. String manipulation. Transverse a string to modify its characters. What are we doing? That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm grabbing the index of the comma, and I am assigning it here. I am then moving through the string, right? I grab that index to create a substring, 0 to the comma, bloop. All right, so create a new string, access individual chunks of the string. Well, I am creating a new string right here. How am I creating a new string? By accessing individual chunks of this string. How am I accessing individual chunks? I'm transversing the string. So guess what? We've actually already checked that guy off as well. Now, it's not simple enough just to check these off. Your program has to do something. We do need to transverse an array list to modify its elements still. All right. Now, bloop. Here we are. So now we are at the user. I enter a sentence. My text sentiment set sentence. Bloop. Set the sentence right here. What this is going to do is, first, I want to make sure, and I would recommend you doing this as well if you're having text input, which you should. I want to lowercase it because I need my text to be more predictable. If they enter all caps, none of this is in capital letters. So I lowercase it, and then I run sentence to array list. This here, guys, is doing something very similar to down here. And by that I mean it's parsing out the string again. So it's chopping it up. Sentence word list, value word list. I look for a space location because I know they entered a sentence. I say as long as that's not -1. Now the reason as long as it's not -1 is because when you do sentence index of, when you use this, and if you forget what that is, if you need more details, guys, use your documentation. Documentation is our friend. All right, when we do index of, if there is a space, it gives us the index of the space. If not, it's going to be a -1. So, as long as it's not -1, I'm going to have the string word be equal to my substring 0 to the space location. I'm going to have the value set here. So I then run get sentiment, get word sentiment. What I'm doing here, bloop, right here, guys, I'm going to loop through my array list. I'm looking for this word that I just found in the sentence by using my substring approach. And I'm going to output, I'm going to return whatever value that is. Quick reminders, how do you loop through an array list? It's a bit different than a normal array, right? So I have first I have my value, sentiment value equal to 0 up here. For int I, the index, I'm going to start at 0. I is going to be less than the word list.size. Size is going to be how we actually get the length of an array list. And again, I don't remember all this stuff all the time. Boom. But we have this. Yay. All right. So now I want to go to the end of my list, and I'm going to add 1 to I each time. I'm going to loop up and up. First off, right off the bat, I'm going to say string sentiment word list. Right? So the word list contains every word in this file, remember? And I'm going to use get, because that's how we actually grab certain indexes of an array list. I. So whatever location I am, whatever the index currently is, I grab that word. And now in my if statement, if sentiment word equals, because for strings we have to use equals, we can't just do like this, right? If sentiment word equals whatever word I was searching for, perfect. Then I say sentiment value is going to be equal to whatever index I'm at. So I say the value list dot get I. And again, guys, I know the value list index is identical, right? Whatever the index of in the word list is, that word's value is at the same index in the value list. So I do right here. Now, I actually keep running through my loop, which arguably isn't necessary. I could even, and we don't do this much, they haven't hit upon this, I could return right here, so I don't keep running through my loop unnecessarily. Regardless, quapow. I return that value. So now again, here's another example of me iterating, of me moving through an array list. Once I grab that value, plop, I assign it up here, and look, we are creating a new array list. Boom. Then I modify my user's input, right? So I'm chopping up the sentence they just put in, and I need to make sure that I don't just grab the same word over and over again. So I say sentence is going to be equal to what sentence used to be equal to, except I chop off the word I already grabbed. So that word that I just added to my list, I chopped off that word from our sentence. And I can show you. All right, so this is just real quick to show you what's actually happening instead of me just explaining. Hello there, my friend. All right, so here we have the start. When I start this loop, the starting sentence is hello there, my friend. All right, and now the ending sentence is hello there, my friend. The word that I just grabbed, the ending sentence is there, my friend. The word that I had just grabbed is hello. The value is 0.75, and the space location was 5. So I use that space location, by the way, which would have been, we're indexing at 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I added 1 to it. So I skip this space, and I create this new sentence. And then I keep going, right? My apparently didn't have a value, or then we start with there, okay? There apparently doesn't have a value. We chop off there and we keep going. So I'm chopping up the sentence as I move through it because that's how I'm slicing it, to grab those values. Okay, that is also a common approach. And again, we're doing string manipulation right there. Now, that's actually the complex stuff, guys. A lot of the complexity of this project comes from parsing up those strings and creating a usable array list from them. Once I have that, honestly, it's kind of easy or peasy. What I do is I calculate the average. Well, we've seen this before. So blah, 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 get average, right? All I do is I loop through my sentence value list, add it up, and divide by how many. That's going to be the average sentiment of my sentence. Now, the remove negative, bum-ba-da-dum, this is for me checking off modifying my array list. What I do here is, again, it's pretty straightforward at this point. I have my array lists already. So let me go down here. When I run remove negative, I loop through my list. Now, the one complexity when you're modifying an array list that you really want to be careful of, especially when removing items, if I started at the beginning and looped up, right, did plus plus, well, each time I chop off an item, it's going to mess up the loop because you could end up with an infinite loop. Also, your indexes are changing as you delete stuff. So I might miss a word. If I was at index 1, and index 1 is a word that's just like really negative, bad, I don't know, and I get rid of that word, well now, bloop, I go to the next index, index 2, but since I got rid of the word at index 1, whatever used to be index 2 is moved over and I miss a word. So for this, I actually, instead of increment, I decrement the index. I say minus minus. So I start at the end of the list, -1, right? Because arrays indexes start at 0, so I need to subtract 1. I can either be greater than or equal to 0, and I decrement. And then I loop through removing if the value is less than 0, I remove the word, I remove it from my sentence list and the value list. Then I run average again. Finally, I run next, I ask the user for more input and say next line, loop back. I again check if it's by, and if it's not, we run the show again? I don't know. And finally, my program's friendly, so it says goodbye. All that being said, what you want to focus on is those array lists and modifying them. Do not get overwhelmed with this. You really can have fun with it. Some really cool things I've seen, if you're struggling for suggestions, guys, is parts of speech. Really easy to say, hey, label how many verbs and nouns. Hey, this has more verbs. Hey, this has more nouns. Oh, and it's positive or negative. It's easy to expand. Or you do something with text sentiment. Maybe you want to remove positive words. There are so many things you can do for this project. It's really open-ended, which sometimes intimidates people, but you want to have fun with it. Something else I will say, guys, text processor has a lot of stuff. Make sure you grab, if you aren't up to date, this. And you can use these as some excellent examples. The difference here is that text processor is running on a file, right? We input a file and have it process the text, as opposed to this project where we're doing it live. So you might use a lot of similar logic to this stuff. It's just that here they're running it on a file, and you're not going to be able to run it on a file. You have to create versions that you can actually make use of in here. Now, there are some methods you might be able to use directly, depending on what your program is, all right? Use your resources, use your examples, have a bit of fun. I'm going to run mine one more time. Oh, that had nothing? There we go. Wow, people are negative. There we are. All right. All that being said, and ta-da! I'm just having fun at this point. All right, onward.